Welcome, everybody, to
That only took, I don't know how long,
What's an
an hour.
Hour Between Friends.
Yes, right.
Welcome, everybody, to a short and sweet episode of kind of what is. We went through a few words in the last time we spoke and we explained a few definitions. And today we're going to have like a little mini show and tell. We're hoping to have a larger kind of episode next time, but we're going to talk about a few things today, which are wardrobe's the wrong word, right? But they're
Right,
things that a religious Jewish person would have. And
right.
we are going to get our information from our rabbi, Rabbi Stuart Federow. Thank you for joining
Right.
us.
Always, anytime.
First things first, off the top of your head, which is a
No pun
terrible pun.
intended.
I know.
Yeah, no, I thought that was actually very clever.
Thank you. I've been saving it up all week. Okay, so a kippah or a yarmulke is something
Yes,
that a religious Jew would wear, and in variant forms, I see people in the Noahide movement have got their own version of kind of a larger hat. I often wear a cap as well if I'm talking about Torah, out of respect for the text and the people that it represents. But can you tell us why? Because there's nothing really in the text, right? It's not
well,
a commandment.
that's not exactly accurate.
Okay.
Okay, it talks about someone who is mourning for something,
Mm-hmm.
and as an expression of their being in mourning, the biblical text explicitly says that they cover their heads.
Okay.
So I think that originally the idea of having your head covered was a way of expressing outwardly that you're in mourning.
And is this because of the destruction of the temple?
I'm not sure the timing of the yarmulke or the kippah. Yarmulke is Ashkenazic, kippah is, I would actually call it modern Israeli Hebrew, but I'm not sure the origin or when they started using the term kippah. But I honestly think it's more after the establishment of the State of Israel, but I could be wrong about
And
that.
it's derived from Kippur, right? From like a covering.
There are a number of possibilities. There's also a word that sounds similar that means the word arch,
Oh,
like an
okay.
arch.
Yeah.
So I'm not that's up for grabs too, as a matter of fact. But so 3 times in the Tanakh it says that somebody was grieving over something, whatever it was, and David on the law on I think it was his son joining the enemy, and he went into mourning and covered his head. That could be an origin, and maybe you're right. If you covered your head as a sign of mourning, then when the temple fell, they would cover their heads.
Because we
But
see
there's
a
more
lot
to
of
it.
orthodoxy, the whole black and white thing that comes out of their loss, the feeling loss for the.
Well, that's true, but the Talmud says that a person should wear their head covered to express their respect, usually translated as fear of God. Okay, so it's a sign of respect for God and acknowledgement that there is someone, capital S, someone above us. There's also a discussion in the Talmud about, a person who walks basically 4 strides or more should never go without their head having been covered. So it's an act of piety. It's an act of expression of acknowledgement of God. It's also, interestingly enough, in the rabbinic writings, it also talks about to distinguish oneself from the Gentile community, one also should be wearing a yarmulke. Okay, and if nobody else in the culture wears the yarmulke, you go to a mall and you're the one wearing the yarmulke, I guarantee you somebody's going to come up to you and start asking you about Judaism. At least that's the way it is here in Houston. So you're distinguishing yourself as a Jew, and that's also in the rabbinic writings of why we wear a yarmulke. Personal opinion, I could be wrong. But the question is also always asked, why is it that only men are required to have their heads covered? And even though that's not exactly accurate, the point is that for the yarmulke, it's considered a male article of clothing. And my answer is always the same thing. Human beings need their physical reminder of their spiritual relationships. In other words, it's a physical, tangible, touchable thing that reminds us that we are in a relationship with God, who is in fact above us. Spiritually, we imagine God physically, even though God is everywhere, be that as it may. So human beings need their physical reminders of their spiritual relationship with God. And the question then becomes, who needs the reminder more, men or women? To which I would also ask, who winds up in jail more often, men or women? And so it seems to me that men have a greater need for this physical reminder that God exists and God demands morality and ethics from God's creation, and especially, by the way, those who are Jewish. Another aspect of this is if a person doesn't wear a yarmulke when they go out, and then they start wearing the yarmulke, I guarantee you their behavior is going to be more controlled. They're going to be more careful. It's like when I put the bumper stickers on my car that are highly indicative that the person driving the car is a Jew. Okay, my driving courtesy increased manifold because I don't want somebody to say, oh, that guy in that car cut me off. He's Jewish. All Jews cut people off, because that's what happens. The behavior of one person will affect how the entire group is seen by those outside the group. Another advantage to wearing the yarmulke is that knowing that people will see you as a Jew because you're wearing the yarmulke out in public will improve your behavior and make you a nicer person, or I would hope it would, because otherwise people are going to say, well, of course he's not nice. He's a Jew. He's wearing the yarmulke. And that is Chilul Hashem. That's profaning the name of God. If you show yourself as a Jew and then act like a creep, because right or wrong, good, bad, or ugly, the behavior of one Jew will reflect on all Jews.
Yeah, it's a poor witness. So I'm curious as to the history of the yarmulke too, because I know that going back through time, when we see pictures of Rambam, he's wearing the turban, right? He's got the Turkish kind of cone head, fez thing going on. He's
right,
got
but remember, the issue is covering the head.
So you can do it however you like.
Well, not exactly. There really are halacha on the size of how much the scalp should be covered. So I'm not quite sure that the one I'm wearing now would be large enough to satisfy everybody's opinion on how large it should be to cover the scalp. Okay. In the modern world, there are yarmulkes that we create, okay, probably more for children, I think, to help entice them to wear one. So, for example, yes, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Okay, so the one I have baseball, the one you have is soccer. So, I'm sorry, European football.
Just football is fine. Okay. And then you've sent me a whole selection of lovely hats, but then there's something like this as well, right? That would be
okay, but that is Bukharian. They'll come in different sizes, different shapes that will reflect the culture in which a person wears it. Obviously, if I'm wearing, a yarmulke with a baseball, it's going to be in an area of the world that has baseball in it. Right. So it'll reflect the culture around you, but it'll still be distinctive enough because probably nobody else in the area will wear that kind of covering on the head, which will also make it a Jewish article of clothing to set the person apart as a Jew, to acknowledge and recognize there's God above him, okay, and also it'll affect his behavior, I would hope. So,
all right. So I think actually that was kind of, we wanted to give a quick rundown of what a yarmulke is and why it is.
Go ahead.
What's the difference between a Tanakh and a Chumash?
Okay, a Chumash is designed for synagogue use. it's only going to contain the Torah, the text of the Torah, the 5 books of Moses, and it's also going to be split up. The Torah text is going to be split up in terms of weekly readings, so that every Shabbat, every Sabbath, there's going to be one portion or parashah of the text that will be read. Concurrent with that is going to be the Haftarah, or Haftorah, some Ashkenazi pronunciation. See, that's the Hertz. For decades and decades and decades, that was the prime Chumash for all congregations.
It's fabulous.
It's fabulous. But remember, that Chumash was created before the establishment of the State of Israel, before the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls, before so much rabbinic scholarship, Jewish scholarship took place in the world. And so even though it's a phenomenal and still quite incredibly useful commentary, the commentary is still going to be not with modern scholarship. But let me put it that way. Okay, I would venture to say, actually, if you want to know the truth, most Chumashim are really quoting from sages, may their memory be remembered, Chazal. But there's a question always about you got a Torah portion. A Chumash will have a Torah portion, then the Haftarah with that Torah portion, then the next Torah portion, and then the Haftarah with that Torah portion, and that's how it goes through the book. And people will say, why are we reading a Haftarah? The Torah is what's central. Okay, why all of a sudden are we reading a story about King David, being harassed by his wife, that making sure that Solomon is the heir to the throne? Why are we reading that? Okay, so what's the history, in other words, of the Haftarah? And there's a question about when this took place. Personally, I think it took place at or around and because of the Maccabees. At some point in time, the Jews were forbidden to read from the Torah. We know this happened under Antiochus of Syria at the time of the Maccabees. They couldn't read from the Torah portion, the portion of the Torah for that Sabbath. So what they did was they picked passages from the rest of the prophets. They picked passages from the prophets that would hint at what should have been read from the Torah portion.
So it will carry a theme
exactly,
that's
or maybe a direct reference. Okay, in other words, you come into services, okay, for Shabbat. It's time to read from the Torah, but you can't, because what they did, okay, in the times of the Maccabees, is a Syrian soldier would pretend to be Jewish, go into the area, into this, like the sanctuary, where people were praying. And if they took out the Torah, he'd lock the door and kill every man, woman, and child in the room. Okay, so you come to the services, it's time to read the Torah, but you cannot read from the Torah, and all of a sudden they're reading a passage from the prophets. Okay, and that would hint at what should be read from the Torah portion. So, best example, of course, you can see that in your Chumash, is the creation story. So you've got the in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth was up, form and void, etc., etc. But you can't read that from the Torah, so what do you read? There's a passage from Isaiah which says, when God spread out the heavens and established the earth and created the heavens, and I know, we're supposed to be reading from Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, and that Torah portion, the Breshit. Then you would you'd go home, you'd secretly study it, read it, whatever you had to do. When the Maccabees rebelled and won their rebellion, of course, they could then start reading again from the Torah, and then they continued to read from the prophets because it enhanced the meaning of the Torah. And that's, in a nutshell, that's what happened. Now, people may argue about when this happened, okay, but that's really when I would put it, is under the Maccabean rebellion, at the time of the Maccabees.
Around 2 years ago now, with my friend Rabbi Neely, we went through the Haftarahs as a program, and I have to say, if you're at home and you haven't, then this is a great way of forcing yourself to go into maybe parts of the Tanakh that you
Oh
wouldn't
yeah,
normally go into.
absolutely.
Great
But
stories and themes.
but like any other time you read Tanakh, every time you come to it and read it, you get something new out of it, because the time from the last time you read that to the time you're reading it now, you also have changed. So passages, sentences, verses will strike you differently because you yourself are different. It's the brilliance of the idea of reading and reading and rereading and rereading and rereading. So
Tanakh, the books of the Bible, and
the
the
Tanakh,
Chumash is the
right,
Torah and the Haftarah and the commentary.
right, and most of the time, well, it depends what you pick up, but most of the time, the Chumash will also come with various commentaries, and there are quite a few different Chumashim. Whoever is the editor of it, whoever's putting it together in the text form, has the choice of what commentaries they will choose to include in the book. The person or committee who put that together picked what comments from what rabbis, because they themselves thought they were interesting or it would help enhance the meaning or whatever. And another person or another committee might pick something else. So besides the stone, in addition to the stone, there's the hertz you also showed. There are other chumashim, and every chumash is going to have a different collection of comments, and it makes it really interesting to compare comments, and it's all part of study.
And those extra commentaries and comments, they're going to generally reflect the movement that's responsible for publishing it.
Right. Besides, within a movement, you'll have various people coming out with their own chumashim, or straight commentaries on the Tanakh, by the way. You can also get a Tanakh where one volume is Genesis, and it will have, commentaries for the book of Genesis. Then the next volume in the set will be Exodus, and so on. So, but each movement, yes, you're right. The Reform has its own Chumash. The Conservative has its own Chumash. The Orthodox have the Chumash. But even within each movement, you can find a different Chumash with different commentaries. And the more variety you have, like besides the stone, there's the hertz. Okay, it'll give you a different insight into the text. It's learning. It's all learning.
So while we're on the subject of books, can you explain to us what, and I'm doing this for people that really have no idea and have come to this cold, what a Siddur is?
Siddur is a prayer book, and it really reflects where people are when they have when they create the prayer book. Okay, the Siddur is also an ongoing, constantly being revised text. It will also have its commentary. Many of them have their own comments or special readings. Okay, not just the normal text of the service, but also other readings to explain what's going on in the service. Some of them, better ones, may have like directions, choreography. Bow here.
So it's kind of like a guide, right? It's
some of them can be very much like a guide on how to do services. There's also, when we talk about a Siddur, there's another concept that we have to understand. Okay, and that's the concept of Kippah and Kavanah. Okay, Kavanah is to feel it. Okay, it's intentional. It's the intent. When you pray, you know what you're saying. Obviously, you believe in what you're saying, and it's an expression not just of what someone wrote many years ago, but it's what you feel and believe and are expressing, along with every other Jew who's ever lived, because they have prayed and are praying the same text. Okay, so Kavanah is with intention. And look, we come in from the street, Okay, we're thinking, I don't know, politics, whatever, what's for doing it, whatever it is on our minds. And so it's not always easy to just go from out there to in here. Okay, it's not easy to go from out there to in here. So the services can be done with no thought about what you're doing. Okay, I would argue, by the way, Judaism, if it is nothing else, is a very practical, practicable religion. Okay, reasonable, rational. And there are benefits to doing things that it's indirect. Okay, you get the benefit from doing it, but it's not necessarily the benefit that is obvious. Okay, people think of Judaism as a Western religion. Well, it's one of the 3 Western religions. No, it's not. It's called Middle East for a reason. It's not called Middle West. It's called Middle East. Judaism is an Eastern religion, especially in its spiritual element.
It's the difference, right, between, because people will often say, well, it's the same prayers. I got this Siddur, someone gifted it to me, and I'm reading. Do I have to do the same prayers every day, every morning? It's the same prayers.
And the answer is yes.
And it's the difference between doing it by rote and understanding what is written. That's not very good. I tried to make it clever. But
right.
but it's meant to be a new chance to experience that thing every day, rather than just a thing that you go through because you feel you have to.
But even if it's something you go through because you have to, it still has an effect on the person who does it. It is quite literally no different than a mantra in an Eastern religion, because Judaism is an Eastern religion. There's a reason why. Why do we cover our eyes when we read the Shema? It's because that's the one verse that we are really, 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 really supposed to do intentionally. Hey, everybody, there is only one God in the universe, and we believe in that God. That's the purpose of the Shema. It's not a prayer. It's a statement of faith. So why is it that the only time that we cover our eyes, to help us concentrate is for that one verse? It's because there's an element or an understanding that maybe you're not concentrating on the service, but there's still benefit in doing the rest of the service. It's the only line that we really are supposed to have complete and total intention while we're reading it, not necessarily the rest. Of course it's better. Of course we're supposed to have intention with the whole service. But even if we come in, even if we're doing it rote, okay, it still has an effect on the person who does it. It's like a mantra. It helps us transcend time and space. Okay, and I'm not pushing the transcendental meditation, but it becomes a meditation exercise that transcends time and space. Okay, have you ever been driving and all of a sudden you've gone 2 or 3 miles and you have absolutely no memory of what you're doing because you were autopilot? Exactly, because your mind was on something, concentrating so heavily, but you were still looking at the trucks and the cars around you. You were still, stopping when you're supposed to stop, or slowing down, or you could still drive the car safely, properly, but you were on autopilot. That is a meditative state, and in my opinion, that's exactly what the rote part of the service is supposed to do for us. It's supposed to put us in a state of meditation that transcends time and space. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, and the Siddur is a book. It's the liturgy and sometimes the practice and the kind of formulaic construction of different services. Because we think that the Siddur is just a prayer book, right? But it can often cover the different feasts and what you do.
Well, it does. It does, but the prayer book has stuff before it begins. It's got the main, normal, usual text, the Baruch Hu, the Shema, the V'ahavta, sections of it, the Michamocha, the Amidah, which is actually the most important part of the whole service, finishing up with Aleinu and Kaddish. Okay, I mean, those are the things that are going to be set. Okay, for a regular, normal time. Okay, it's got one line before the Baruch Hu because it's like a shorter service. Friday night's going to begin with Kabbalat Shabbat, which means accepting, receiving the Sabbath. Yes, it can be something that's rote, but even when it's rote, even when it's a holiday, okay, it still is going to be put you in a meditative, done properly. It's going to be, you're going to be in a meditative state, and it allows you to transcend. I don't know how else to put it. Okay, there are times like high holidays where we're going along in the reading, and I want to say something about the text, okay, and maybe apply something we just read to something that's going on around in the world. But when I do, you can physically watch the congregation come out of even they've been going along in the service, they've been responding in the service, they've been davening, praying the service, okay. But when I speak, it's like they're coming out of a stupor. They're coming out of and that's the effect. Even if we are not intellectually considering every line in the Siddur that we are reading out loud, it still has an effect on us. Okay, it's an Eastern religion. It could be a mantra that allows us to get into a meditative state and transcend time and place. There's an interesting story in tradition where the rabbis would be so heavily into their prayers that they would start in one place in the room, and when they would come out of their prayers, they'd be in a totally different place. And what do we say about autopilot with a car? Okay, it puts you in a meditative state and allows the mind, even though you're doing these things, even though they're by rote, your mind, okay, expands. It surpasses time and place.
And for the people that haven't been to a service, much of the liturgy is sung, right? They just reminded me of kind of, you might have a favorite song from your youth, and you've listened to it 100 million times, and the words haven't changed, and you probably don't even think about what the words mean anymore. You just get a feeling or a recollection from the song itself.
Jason, my example for that, which is, okay, it's a United States thing, okay, and that is if you go to a baseball, by the way, that's a game with a bat, and you get, no, just kidding. Yeah. Okay. They always, right before the game, they sing the Star Spangled Banner, okay, the national anthem of the United States of America, okay. Does every person in the entire stadium concentrate on the words of that song? Are they really thinking about Francis Scott Key in a ship, hoping that he'll see the flag still flying when the sun rises? No, they're singing it as one, okay, because it's what makes baseball the American sport, the sport of America, because now we've made it something that unites all of us in song, even though we're competing against each other, okay, which is like an image of the United States and the melting pot, okay. But nobody's really concentrating on the meaning of it. But if you went to the service, if you went to the baseball game and didn't sing the Star Spangled Banner, you'd feel like there's something wrong here. There's something missing here. So even though people are not concentrating on this very specific meaning, which they should, I'm not saying they shouldn't, but even if they don't, there's an effect on the person who does it. And I think that's the same thing with services, with prayer. So.
Okay, so I think that might be all we have time for today. But okay. I'm curious if the people are watching at home and you've seen maybe a Jewish friend or a colleague has something or spoke about something, you're not sure what it is. leave it in the comments and we'll come back and we'll talk about it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, try and fill in your glossary of terms. Thank you very much, Rabbi Federow.
Always my pleasure to talk to you.
Appreciate your time. And you guys at home, don't forget to leave comments under the video, subscribe. Rabbi Federow has his own playlist on my YouTube channel. You can go there. It's on the front page. It's like the third one down or something. You can click that and you see everything we've ever done over the last however many years.
A lot of fun.
And we'll see you guys very soon. Bye-bye.